Painting, when it succeeds, it combines all the things that make the world visual in a completely different form. It's not about replicating the world. It's about finding a kind of synthesis of your own emotion, desire, and connection with the world itself. But it's not a duplication, because that is less than the world. In fact, it becomes a new world onto itself. And anyways, Doug's painting always does that. The best paintings for me, I feel alive when I see them.
Well, for me, the reason I'm drawn to painting, the most interesting part about it is that it occupies space and at the same time represents a virtual space of some sort. It also carries with it the history of its own becoming. So that, I love it when people come up to my paintings and look at it right up close, and I see them scanning around the surface, because, that's kind of at the heart of it for me. And what they're doing at that moment is kind of registering time, or even recovering time in a way. And they may not be aware that they're doing that, but that's what they're doing. They're kind of unpainting the painting. I would like people to unpaint my paintings right back down to the ground as they look at my work. Would be an ideal situation to, unravel the painting in that way.
Doug inspired me to recognize the painterly potential of painting. That is, making a mark that does not duplicate what we see, but creates a synthesis of material, a very, very rich material that has enormous potential with perception itself. I mean, it can fail at doing that, but when it succeeds, it combines all the things that make the world visual.
There was a whole series of paintings that I did on the theme of architecture. And so I was interested in taking pictures of interiors and lobbies and things like that. And it was before I had a digital camera, and I was using an analog camera. When I got the pictures back, I hadn't realized it at the time, but the film had captured the reflections behind me and around me, resulting in what looked like a double exposed picture. But so it really abstracted the representational nature of the photographic image, which was interesting in itself. But I also realized that I was unable to focus on the interior itself and the reflections I was seeing on the glass at the same time, whereas the camera could do that. And that was very interesting to me in a formal sense, but also an experiential sense. That I realized that at that moment, I had always considered, the painting as what's out in front of me, the vision of what's out in front of me. And so I started this group of work based on that idea that, the sense of space is more than just the visual. And that is carried over into the work that I'm doing now, which is why, my emphasis on process and this idea of seeing in, or looking at a surface as a physical thing and imagining it as a virtual space at the same time. It makes the painting a very unique kind of an experience in that respect. I think it was present in work that I'd done before, but not explicit until that particular body of work. It's a privilege to be a part of a permanent collection. I mean, what's really powerful about it is that you know that your work is going to be cared for, that there is actually someone who is going to look after it over the years and share it with others, and that it has a home. And there's something really satisfying to know that it's going to have a life.
The painting that is in the collection at Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery, which is a tondo, a round canvas, that particular subject was installed beside a moon painting. The composition of the flower painting was exactly the same size as the moon in a much larger composition. That painting also corresponds to a time in my life of considerable personal stress, of loss of life, and the sadness that comes from that invariably. And I'm joking up a little bit thinking about it because it's difficult, but in a sense, it led to this connection of all these different things in the rest of my life. But I realized at this point in my life that flowers are given in our culture as a gesture of celebration, of happiness, but also at times of sadness. And times of sadness are accompanied, even happiness is accompanied often by tears, which affects your vision. And so this out of focusness that comes from tears, I recognize a parallel with the camera and the fact that structurally it can go out of focus. So I explored that phenomenon, those two phenomena of direct vision and emotional biological effect, and the camera and its mechanical effect, and tried to find the point where I could use that similarity in representation. And so that painting of flowers, which are in the form of a tondo, which also replicates the lens, sort of just layers that moment of seeing.
This sort of double-sided nature of your work that I was trying to get at earlier, where I talked about you can't pin down the metaphor that you're making as being kind of romantic or spiritual or literary, or the metaphor exists in this kind of uncertain, questioning realm, and that's a good example of. This is a good example of it because you're talking. The work deals directly with your use of technology and its relationship to painting, and the reciprocal relationship between photography as a technology and painting as an older technology, and so that dialogue is very active. But then we hear that absolutely underneath all of this is a metaphor for tears. And what is more human than tears? Just when you think you understand the work as a kind of analysis of this relationship or reciprocal relationship between technologies, we find out that it's actually about being human. Your influence on me was largely to help develop me as a critical thinker and not just a visual thinker. You used a term that I adopted in my talk this week. Visual abundance, is really key there as well. Just the wealth of texture and light. And that is where I'm trying to get at with my current work, but that has its roots in these architectural pieces. The Wellington Street is one of them. But visual abundance is such a great word, and it's a simple, two simple words, but it's so accurate. And so I have to thank you for that.
I'm glad you reminded me. I'll use it again too. I'll credit you crediting me.
Yeah. Times during my development as a painter that were very lonely, when there was no money coming in, there was no teaching opportunities, I had to do other kinds of work to pay the rent. And when you find yourself in that kind of a situation, friendship means more than anything in terms of survival as an artist. I think you need that kind of support.
Well,
and you don't always get it just because you know somebody. You know, you have to develop a relationship with them that is reciprocal and is based on empathy and exchange and a true belief in what the other person is doing. And I think that is what we have as friends together. We have that kind of trust in one another. I know from experience that you're always going to be honest with me about my work. That has been incredibly important to me as an artist, where you will call me out and say, I don't think that's your strongest work.
I think my critique of your work is usually little niggly observations rather than the whole, because most of the paintings as a whole are resolved. And if there's something, and it's usually just a visual thing, I do spot little contradictions, let's say.
So we've always kept in touch through all of this time. We've remained friends and stayed in contact, and wherever possible, you know, we meet up, and it's like we'd never spend any time apart. You know, it's been very, very rewarding experience to have as sort of constant artistic companions.